Hi, welcome to this channel on magnetic energy, principles, technology, applications. This video is about magnetic energy and the sun. And like the other videos, this one just scratches the surface of this topic and really what's happening with magnetic energy. This, I can't even express how deep, it's infinitely deep and amazing, this topic. And as humanity evolves technologically and in consciousness, it will become apparent of how amazing the mechanisms that are running the universe, how amazing they really are. And so, and this functionality with the sun and our planets is no exception. So as you may have already guessed, in the magnetic energy model, the sun is mostly hollow. And why is that? So it's partly because the idea of the sun needing to be this mass, this nuclear furnace that weighs just a ton so that it can keep the solar system intact, it just doesn't really work at all with the magnetic energy model. The sun is more of a conduit for magnetic energy, for etheric energy, and that expression, the gravity is basically, it flows through, the gravity circuit is connected through the sun, and the sun provides a conduit for that, so it's really the energy of the gravity, the magnetic energy, that does the work of gravity. The sun is nothing more than a conduit to that. And the sun is also, it's a conduit for that etheric energy, and as that energy comes into the sun, that's when the transmutation happens, and you get this reaction that is in the interior of the sun. And like I've mentioned in other videos, having that open space allows for an etheric buildup of pressure and to make a reaction that essentially then creates magnetic energy pulses that have very distinct magnetic resonance signatures in them, and every star essentially has a different pulse rate. And so the energy leaving the sun in a magnetic energy model, it leaves the sun as pulses, as magnetic energy pulses that you could say are combined with light. Now let's just review one thing real quick, and that's this whole notion of waves and of pulses of energy. And so a lot of people are taught that light waves literally travel through space, or that there's actual light waves, when in fact, like at least in the magnetic energy model, there's no actual traveling to that. It's similar to that whole analogy, if you drop a stone in water and it creates ripples in that water and that wave. Those ripples, we measure that, those waves, but we measure that as waves, but in fact nothing's actually moving. So what's happening is an etheric disturbance that happens, and that etheric disturbance is manifested or measured as waves. But what's really happening is there's a reaction that causes basically a function in the ether. But as the energy first leaves a star, it leaves as pulses of energy. So it's extremely efficient. Those pulses, they have magnetic resonance signatures in them, and those pulses of light / heat / magnetic energy aren't even expressing at that point. They're more of a potential. And so as they express through the etheric, as an etheric expression, they are much faster than light waves as we measure them. And in fact, they're roughly 4 times faster. Light pulses are roughly 4 times faster than light waves. Those travel very efficiently, and they don't cause an elongation, or what we would call a wave formation, a light wave formation, until they come in contact with something that's essentially thicker, if you will, or more robust, or more full of molecular structures than what we call space. So like when they hit an atmosphere, for example, or an ionosphere, or some sort of object or something, that's when they will manifest as an elongation into a waveform. But prior to that, they're a pulse. The stars emit pulses, and they emit pulses that, like I said, are a combination of that light, that heat, that magnetic energy, but it's a potential. It's the potential of that expression. So stars aren't just randomly heating up space. That energy doesn't manifest as heat until it elongates into a wave, and an etheric expression of that process then translates into heat. So in that sense, the energy coming off of stars, it's a very efficient process. It really only manifests as heat when it strikes something that can cause an elongation in the ether, a wave expression. Now, it's really interesting because as stars pulse and they have that specific pulse rate, everything within their solar system resonates with them and that pulse rate together. So there's an influence there. There's a connection that happens all the way out to the outer part of the heliosphere, the heliosheath, and everything within that is influenced greatly by that magnetic resonance and that pulse rate of that star. And so there's an influence that takes place there. And so, like, say, the planetary bodies become an expression of that, and an expression and a reflection of that pulse rate. And you could say, well, yeah, because light's reflecting on it. But it's a little deeper than that, because there's a lot of subatomic resonances that happen within that pulse rate that are identifiable and trackable. And so all of that is expressed throughout the solar system as those pulses elongate into wave form, what we would call waveform. And then it goes, as the light travels beyond that, the solar system boundary, then it has the same exact function. So they'll be as pulses until they essentially come into contact with something else that is causing them to elongate. And so when you think about in terms of how efficient that is, it also changes. Those pulses aren't really visible until they elongate into a waveform, and then they start to manifest as light and heat, and then those resonant signatures really come online in our dimension fully. And so that's what we are typically seeing and monitoring from stars, is the expression in our dimension. But from a magnetic point of view, what we will be doing, and especially when we have the right alloys, we will be measuring and monitoring the magnetic pulses that are still in potential form before they elongate into those waves. We'll be measuring those, and then we get a much better reading on actually what's happening with stars and what's happening with all the characteristics regarding that star and that solar system. And so that'll become very important in the near future. And the other thing is, when you think about the cycles that a star goes through, particularly our sun, and it goes through these highs and lows, and through where you have a rise in sunspot cycles, and then we have coronal mass ejections. There's that particular expression of our sun has to do with a redistribution of energy that sun takes in and then releases that energy. And so right now, with it's our entire solar system is energetically out of balance. It's molecularly out of balance because of the contamination that has come from our planet. And as that contamination flows through our sun, then it creates this mechanism where the sun is attempting to essentially take out the garbage, if you will, and clean out that energy by expelling it. And so as we get closer into the next few years and that energy intensifies and we're closer into a pole shift, we could see a dramatic rise in not only sunspot cycle, but in coronal mass ejections we go through this final phase before a pole shift of really reconciling what's been happening with our planet and our solar system for the last few decades, and really getting the sun back in order and back in balance, and along with the rest of our system. So the sun, from a magnetic energy point of view, yes, it's like this incredible transmutation device that has these just ongoing reactions that take place, but the idea of it being a nuclear furnace that has a compressed amount of matter and it's going to run out of energy doesn't really fit at all within the magnetic model. The system that is causing this our sun to function as well as other stars is a system that can essentially go on forever. It's a system that can last, there's really no end date to it. Now, there may be different phases and different things that the stars are in, but it's not because they're running out of energy. There could be all kinds of other issues that would influence the etheric flow and the conversion in those stars. But this whole idea of the classic model of the star cycle and is just doesn't really fit within the magnetic model at all. And it's partly because they're really not taking into consideration how dependent the stars are, as well as everything else, on this etheric flow of energy, on the consistency of this transmutation into magnetic energy and that expression of magnetic energy, and how it literally sustains our solar system and sustains life. And so just if you think about that and you think about how our sun is working in the magnetic energy model, hopefully it will start to answer more puzzles or unanswerable questions that have been a problem in science for quite some time now. And just think of it as an interdimensional process, a transmutation process, and it's really doing its best to clean things up and to help us get rid of the incompatible molecular structures in our solar system and around our planet. And with that, I will see you next time.